Michael Jordan win the NBA World Championship every single year that he was in the league? No. But the thing about Michael was that when he was in a final, he always won. This isn't because he's the greatest player of all time. It's because he had a killer instinct. All of us will eventually get to a big moment where the lights are going to shine bright and you're either going to wilt or melt in that spotlight or you're going to shine through. There's a rare breed that actually finishes. They deliver under pressure every single time because at the end of the day, guys, we have to remember that pressure reveals identity. And it's always about something bigger than just who we are in that moment. Welcome, guys, back to the LFG Energy Podcast. It's Thursday, which means it's time for a new episode. Today, I want to talk about something unique and rare in society, which is how to have a killer instinct. And what is it that separates people who always, in the biggest of moments, never seem to fall short? Now, that doesn't mean that they're not vulnerable in other areas. Take, for example, an athlete like Michael Jordan. Did Michael Jordan win the NBA World Championship every single year that he was in the league? No. There were times that they fell short in the playoffs, especially early in his career, and then also in the very middle of his career, or his second act, if you will, when he came back from playing professional baseball for just 1 year. But the thing about Michael was that when he was in a final, he always won. This isn't because he's the greatest player of all time, which I argue that he is. It's because he was a closer. He had a killer instinct. Other athletes like Kobe Bryant have a killer instinct. Roger Federer, Novak Djokovic, to look at tennis players, Rafael Nadal, Tom Brady, even Eli Manning you could make a case for, who I'm not the biggest fan of, but he made it to 2 Super Bowls and he beat the greatest quarterback of all time in the only Super Bowl appearances he ever made. So these people had a killer instinct. They knew how to close. And this applies, guys, to anybody, because all of us will eventually get to a big moment, whether it's in a boardroom, in a classroom, sitting opposite someone, some big moment in life where the lights are going to shine bright and you're either going to wilt or melt in that spotlight or you're going to shine through. Now, we've done a few episodes about similar topics, which is how to perform or how to not choke. But today is about what it is to actually have a killer instinct. And I'm going to give you guys a framework for how to develop one. Because guys, once you have a killer instinct, you will never lose. That doesn't mean you win every single time. And I want to be careful there. It just means you'll never lose. Something great or substantive will come from every single time you step into that bright spotlight. And that's what today is all about. So many people are great starters, great planners, great performers, right up until that very final moment. But there's a rare breed that actually finishes or closes. They deliver under pressure every single time, and that's what I want to talk about today. So you can learn how to become one of them. So guys, when it comes to not finishing or not being able to get it done when it matters most, there's a certain psychology that comes behind it. Now again, previous episodes, I've talked about what it means to not choke, what it means to be able to perform under the bright lights. But again, closing and walking through that door is something really important here. But for everyone that gets into those big moments, there is a mental block that happens right before that moment, right before you take that final step. And most of it is rooted in fear at the end of the day. Fear of failure, fear of success, or that you don't deserve it perhaps. Fear of judgment. Because at the end of the day, guys, we have to remember that pressure reveals identity. And those moments are pressure, no doubt. But the real reason that people fall apart in those pressure situations is that their self-image has not actually caught up to their potential. It's not that they're not capable or they're not worthy of this. It's just that the identity of being a closer has not been built into them. And so for a lot of people where it's not been built in, a lot of self-sabotage and overthinking, which are merely just doubts in disguise, start to actually set in. Now let's take a moment here and just think back, because all of us have fallen short or not been able to close the deal sometimes when it mattered most. Think about something that you were performing for, whether it was a sports event or you were having to give a big presentation. Think about an area in your life. Maybe it was a personal relationship where you had a moment or an opportunity to create something or to take it to another level and you didn't for whatever reason. There's also, again, going back to all the sports analogies, we've seen so many athletes miss that free throw that they've made so many times, or the golfer that misses the putt that seems so routine. But to have a killer instinct means you know how to close. And to close, you have to have a killer instinct. So the two are pretty much synonymous. Now what I want to do is actually create this framework for you. And it's just the acronym of CLOSE. First, C, we have to remain calm under pressure. So being able to narrow our focus, controlling our breathing, embracing the moment rather than running from it. Now, this is why I've said in the past, it's important to recognize that those big moments are callings for you. They're huge opportunities of growth. So don't run from it, embrace it. Be excited about it. Consider it a privilege. Next is L, which is lock in purpose. Your purpose is so locked in. Why you're doing this, or the greater calling, the mission that's at hand here is so strong, so prevalent, that no matter what, you are not going to be deterred. You're not going to be taken off course. And it's important because you need to reconnect with why all of this matters and whatever it is that you're doing. Again, let's look back on some of the greatest closers. When they were in those huge moments, sometimes they were chasing history. Other times it was some monster or demon that you could clearly see in their eyes and in their energy that they're trying to conquer. But there's a real purpose there, and it matters to them because purpose reduces fear, and it's always about something bigger than just who we are in that moment. Next is O, over-prepare to over-deliver. It goes without saying, guys, the person who is most prepared is going to give themselves the best opportunity at being able to get the deal done. Now, there's still going to be some nerves, and just because there's a final step to take doesn't mean it's a foregone conclusion that you'll be able to take it, or that if you do, you'll actually come out victorious. But the only reason you ever get into these positions is if you are over-prepared. I have a great way of thinking of this, that you want to prepare like a champion, but always train like an underdog. And there's a big difference because an underdog trains with such intensity because they're chasing something. They want something. They know that they've been counted out and they want to prove the whole world wrong. Now, when it comes to preparation, we have to be careful, and this is why champions know how to prepare because they know what it takes. They're not going to be distracted by shiny objects or doing extra things. They're not really going to get them there, but just ultimately keep them busy. So again, prepare like a champion, train or execute like an underdog. And remember, guys, above all, you don't rise to the occasion, you default to the level of your training. So whatever the moment is, if you have prepared and this gap is not that short, if you stumble, which you will, or you trip up, that fall is not as catastrophic. In fact, it might even feel like you just actually tripped, which is why so many closers are actually able to regain themselves in some of these big moments. It's not that they were perfect. In fact, there were countless mistakes made in the game, in the match, in the moment, during the talk, on stage, whatever it might have been. But because the preparation was up there in meeting the moment, that fall or stumble was just that, a quick stumble. But if we're not prepared, and this is a wide gap, this fall is catastrophic and sometimes unrecoverable. Next, S, see the finish. Now I'm going to tell you guys, S and E, the final two, are the most difficult in this entire framework. The first three that we talked about are basic common knowledge. Very few people execute or are able to grasp this framework, but it's well known. But these last two are the most difficult. So S, see the finish. Be able to visualize. There's tremendous power. It's actually so understated about how powerful visualization works. Mentally rehearsing, seeing yourself in that moment, going to bed every night, thinking about it in such detail that it actually feels like you're there. You actually can trick your brain that when you do get into that big moment, you won't actually be nervous because your brain will feel a sense of familiarity. It will know, hey, I've actually been here before. Yes, it might have been in my dreams or in a different dimension, but I've been here before. This is not foreign to me. This is not a surprise. And guys, that is one of the greatest ways to conquer pressure, because if you can act like you've been there and own that moment, or if your brain actually has been there, it's going to be much easier for you to perform and be able to execute on this killer instinct. Last is E, execute like it's already yours. I touched on this here with seeing the finish, but identity level performance is to own it. To be able to act like you've been there, own it, and carry with you that energy of confidence, not arrogance, because that's a delicate line, but that this moment is not too big for you and that you are going to be equal to it. As we talked about in one of the earliest episodes for the LFG Energy Podcast. Guys, that framework, the close framework right there, is total LFG energy. And if you have a killer instinct and you are not going to wilt under pressure or melt under the brightest of lights, you'll always come out victorious, even if it doesn't mean you actually won. Now, a tenet of having a killer instinct is knowing that failure isn't an option. The whole Tony Robbins, we must burn the boats to take the island strategy. You have to know that there's no plan B. It's plan A or die. That's the intensity at which you have to operate. Now, of course, no one is actually going to die. In your mind, you need to create that type of an intense environment. Now, the best example of this, because I'm a huge movie buff and I love observing characters in movies, particularly intense moments, and it's even better if it was a historical recount, is the movie Apollo 13. Ed Harris, who played the incredible character Gene Kranz, who was basically running the mission control deck and heading up the entire rescue operation to save these 3 astronauts that were trapped in space, which was the Apollo 13 mission. Now, I've talked a lot about this in keynotes, but if you can remember the movie, there is a particular scene towards the end, right before the astronauts are going to make the attempt to thrust themselves back into the Earth's atmosphere, that some people who had been up all night and really starting to maybe get a little bit cynical or negative because the emotions were just getting so intense and everyone was just tired, were whispering behind Gene Kranz that if this fails, it's going to be the biggest disaster in NASA history. And the other gentleman said, yeah, I'm well aware of it. Like this is going to be a stain on the program. It's going to be a stain on this country. It'll be an absolute tragedy. Now, Gene Kranz does two things in that moment. The first thing he does is he looks back at these men and he says, with all due respect, gentlemen, I believe this is about to be our finest hour. That's LFG energy right there. I get goosebumps every time I watch it, and definitely when I say it or recount it, because he's saying, I don't care. Failure is not an option. You guys might be ready to wave the white flag of surrender or admit that there could be a possibility of defeat. I'm not going to allow 1 ounce of that to enter my mind or body. I have to see this thing through as if failure is not an option and that we are going to win or bust. The other thing that Gene Kranz did, again, which was part of the whole energy, is while everybody else looked really disheveled, again, after being up for 3 straight days or however long the mission actually took, and again, under intense stress, scrutiny, and literally having 3 people's lives in your hands that are so far away, this man, Gene Kranz, right at the biggest moment when everybody else is falling apart, he stands up and buttons his tie in his shirt, basically dressing himself up to meet the moment. That's LFG energy, but that's a closer. He's ready no matter what. When everybody else is falling apart, he puts himself back together again. When everybody else is ready to give up, he doesn't allow doubts to even enter his mind or her mind. And guys, that's what it takes to be a closer. That's what it takes to have an ultimate killer instinct. I can't stress it enough. Now, let me be real with you guys, because this is where people either grow or they get stuck. You can have a killer instinct. You can do it all right. You can be the best closer in the game. You can prepare, you can visualize, you can stay calm, you can execute with everything you got, and it still might not go all the way. It may not go according to plan. That doesn't mean you failed, guys, at all. All it means, and just confirms for you in a very humble way, is that life is unpredictable. It means that there are always some variables that you can't control. I used to always tell my athletes that I coached in Taekwondo that about 85% of it, when you get up there, is 100% in your control. 85%. The other 15% is up to the gods. It's to the universe. All things that you have no control over, and it's literally a crapshoot. But you have to max out on that 85% if you're going to give yourself the best possible chance of success. If you're anything short in that area, you've already lost. But again, guys, closers just don't finish when it's easy. They finish when it hurts. They finish when it doesn't guarantee reward. They walk away knowing that they gave everything, and that ultimately is what makes up their identity. So just know, you may not always get the medal. You may not always have your hand raised. You may not always land the job, earn the paycheck, land the girl or the guy, have the happy ending. Sometimes the lesson is in something else. But if you gave it your all, and again, you maxed out on those areas that you had direct control over, you will forever remain a closer. And the wins will come inevitably. So now, guys, what I want you to do as we wrap this up is to find one open loop in your life, something that you've started but you haven't finished, or look back on a moment when you didn't actually close. Think back and see, could a framework like the close one that we've described today, or that I've given you, could it have been helpful? Would it have helped actually make a difference? I'm sure if you really get under the hood and psychoanalyze some of these losses or moments when you just didn't perform at all and you didn't rise to the occasion or close, that something was off. And it's good to evaluate our losses, as we've talked about in previous episodes. But find something that maybe you're in the midst of or that you haven't finished and you started, and close it, finish it. And better yet, what I really want you to do is send me a DM on Instagram and let me know that you actually finished it. Because I love celebrating other people's wins. I love these stories of resilience and when people actually break through or when they close. And nothing excites me more than coming across someone who is either just developed or is still maintaining a killer instinct. So reach out to me anytime, guys. I appreciate you listening to this and hope it was helpful. And we'll see you guys on the next episode of the LFG Energy Podcast.